I quit social media 3 years ago, and I'm always getting asked, Kate, what on earth do you do with your time now that you aren't spending it on TikTok or Instagram? Like, literally, how do you spend your days? Well, let me show you. Welcome to my analog hobby corner. Ignore this black box, it's for decorative purposes only. When I was first getting off of social media, I realized a couple things. One, I had a lot of time on my hands all of a sudden. When you're constantly scrolling and getting those dopamine hits repetitively, you don't realize how much of a time suck social media addiction can become. And so I was losing hours on a day to these platforms. And then when I decided to delete them all and get them out of my life, all of a sudden I had all this time back and didn't know what to do with it. And the second thing I realized was I had less of a need to be on my phone all of the time. So I just was out now in the real world, not on my phone with all of this time. Like, what am I supposed to do with myself now? So that's when I found myself very drawn to tactile analog hobbies, just to try and heal my broader tech addiction, social media addiction, the time that I had been giving to my phone and to being just caught up in the endless scroll that you can get on social platforms and social media. I found 3 hobbies in particular that really called to me and helped me as I was healing from my own social media addiction. Each of these hobbies has really unique qualities that helped me in my healing process of weaning myself off of social media and constantly being addicted to technology, checking my phone, checking my platforms, and having all the time back. So I wanted to run you through these 3 hobbies that really helped me and taught me to think about things a little bit differently as I was getting off of social media. So let's get into them. So the first hobby that I've loved as I've been weeding myself off of social media and just healing my tech addiction and phone addiction overall has been film photography. Something about me is when I have my camera and I'm outside and I'm watching a sunset or something, if I just am using my digital camera that's on my phone, I'm taking 100 pictures of that sunset and I will not go back and look at any of them most likely. So what I have really loved about film photography is it has taught me to slow down and appreciate every single shot that I take so much more than when I was relying on using my digital camera on my phone as my primary source of taking pictures. I just think that there are so many cool things about film photography. Like I said, I love the fact that it is a limited number of shots, so every single one you have to pay a little bit more attention to because you have to decide, is this one of the 36 shots that I'm gonna blow through on this roll that I have in here? Or do I maybe want to save it for an even more opportune, situation that I find myself in and I want to take a picture of? Another thing that I really love about it is the fact that you have to truly slow down for every single shot because you have to apply the right settings for every shot. Where is the person who you want to have in frame? What is the lighting for this exact moment in the day? All these things you have to think through and really position yourself up and get ready for it as you're preparing to take that one of 36 shots on your roll. And because you put so much more care and attention and settings and time into each single shot that you take, what I found is I have so much more of a deep connection with each of those shots. So I can put some examples in here, but if I had been relying on my phone and I had taken any number of these shots that I'm showing you, I would not have had the same level of connection and depth to that shot because it was so intentional. I really had to pause and wait for the exact right moment to capture this moment in time, this slice of life that I was seeing. And that has been just the most beautiful thing about film photography for me as someone who's healing from a tech addiction where I've constantly had that instant gratification of, I can just whip out my phone and take 20 pictures for all I care and maybe throw some of them on social media. With film photography, it's a lot more slow, it's more intentional. Every single shot you have to think through, you have to make sure all the settings are properly set up, and you just have that deeper connection with every single shot. So that's how I have found film photography to be one of the most healing hobbies for me. And it's also really helped get my creative juices flowing more. Obviously, I'm here on YouTube, so I've always had this desire to create content and just like make beautiful things in art. Not that I really have been making that on my channel so far, but I do find that film photography has reignited a certain level of artistic eye and creativity within me that I wasn't really leaning into or tapping into when I was addicted to social media. I mean, I just didn't have the time to go out and have like a lovely photography day when I was on my phone all the time. And that's kind of that's the crazy truth about it, is when you are addicted to social media, like I was, and I was down bad. I talked about that at length in previous videos. You just don't realize how much of the day and of your life you're losing. So this has been a very healing hobby for me, and I highly encourage it if you are interested in photography at all. Film really teaches you to be more intentional about every single shot because you have that deeper connection with it through all the settings you apply, and I just love it. I don't know what to say. I love it. The next hobby that I've really loved as I've been healing from my social media and phone addiction has been listening to records. And I know that this may sound a little silly. It doesn't exactly sound like a hobby, but I have found that getting a record player and listening to records has been so healing for my addiction and weaning off of the digital overload that we often face when we are just constantly overwhelmed by everything that you can consume on social media and the internet. I've just found these to be so helpful for healing my attention span issues and also getting closer to the way that the artist actually wanted you to listen to the music. So with the attention span comments, I think that social media, I mean, this isn't a secret at this point. Social media is ruining our attention spans. We know it. I used to work for TikTok. I know how it goes. It's a part of the platform. It's why they were built to be addictive so they can monetize. I've talked about that in other videos. A detrimental side effect to all of that and the time that we're spending just consuming the constant inundation of information that we're getting online is the attention spans of our generations have gotten shot. So I have been trying to challenge myself to listen to and watch longer form content when I am not on my phone and just addicted to social media all of the time. That was probably one of my biggest early journeys, was how do I heal my attention span, which has now gone to nothing. And I found records to be one of the pieces to the puzzle here. I love records. It forces you to sit down and listen to the album top to bottom, or we have to flip it a couple times depending on how they've printed it. And even when you're on platforms like Spotify, for example, I find that if you do have a shorter attention span and you haven't worked on starting to heal it, you'll find yourself skipping songs very often. Maybe you're 30 seconds into a song and you're like, oh, I'm bored already. Skip to the next one. Wanting that constant stimulation no matter what. And so if you're bored, you just skip it, you go right to the next. That is one of the beautiful things about listening to records and just having the record player going, is the fact that you can't do that. You actually have to sit and listen and just enjoy the album exactly as it was built and as it was created to be listened to. So I think that is one of the beautiful healing things about listening to records and getting a record player. I also have found that I think Spotify cheapens what the artists have created sometimes because you have this ability to skip through things very quickly. So by buying a record, one, it's not cheap all of the time if you don't go to a thrift store or anything, but you do get so much more out of it. You don't even realize the amount of art and effort that goes into creating albums and on vinyl, the way that musicians have over the years. So that's been a really beautiful thing to realize. And you also, again, you just have to be more intentional every single time that you make a purchase. And you also have to be more intentional when you're choosing which record to play. If you have friends over, it's a whole process of, oh my gosh, which one am I gonna put on? We're gonna be listening to the same one for a while. I find that so fun. I think it's so healing. It heals your attention span. It makes it so it feels less cheap, the music that you're listening to, because you can't skip through it. And then you also really get to appreciate the art, both visually that's been created on the vinyl, if they've done, interesting stuff to the sleeves or have little exclusive items in here, or just the way that the album was meant to be listened to, the way that the songs are meant to flow into each other and tell a story through the music. So that is, just listening to records in general, and listening on a record player for me has been a really healing hobby that is a very nice change of pace from when you are addicted to your phone and addicted to social media and technology in general. Oh, don't mind me. I just have to put away this book I just read. Just kidding, I have to return it to a friend. This is a loaner. But it does bring me to my last hobby that I found really helpful as I've been healing from my social media addiction and my tech and phone addictions overall, which has been reading books. When I was a kid, I loved to read. I was such an avid reader. I was a bookworm. I wanted to just consume everything that I could get my hands on. And one of my favorite days of the week is when me and my sisters and my mom would all go to the library and we'd just get stacks of books to bring home and read. And of course, these weren't, the most highbrow of books, but they still were just lovely little stories to be consuming as a kid. And then there was a point, I would say around high school, when I started to realize I was spending more and more time online and on my phone. Especially, this was when the time of Facebook was starting to come out, Snapchat was starting to come out, and more of my life was actually just consuming the internet. And at some point along the way in those years in high school, I just forgot about reading as an option for a way to pass my time. And it's really sad and shameful for me to admit that now, but I think that a lot of us resonate with that experience or that feeling of realizing how detached you've become because you're spending so much time on the internet and on social media and on technology and your phone in general, that it starts to chip away at the other things that you enjoy out of life. And I definitely experienced that. I think from somewhere along the time in high school through college, and then even a couple years post-grad, when I was this entire time, I was not reading at all. I was just living my life on the internet, on the go. And I don't even think in college, I read maybe any of the books that were on my school curriculums, which is really another embarrassing thing to admit. I wasn't the best college student, let's just say that. And it was sad. It was a sad way to be living. I was spending all of my time on the internet without even realizing that it was just taking away from other areas of my life and other hobbies that I had been enjoying for so long in my life prior. So when I finally quit social media and had all of this time back, I knew that reading books was going to have to be one of the challenges and one of the hobbies that I tried to, reincorporate into my daily life to heal my addiction and heal my attention span once more. But this, of all of these hobbies here, of the film photography and the record playing, this has been the most challenging one. Reading was not easy to get back into. It truly felt like a skill that had atrophied over time, and just the ability to sit down and look at something like this and not be hyper-stimulated was impossibly challenging at first. The first couple times that I tried to read after having quit social media and trying to just live a little bit healthier again, it was impossibly hard. Like, I actually can't explain. I mean, maybe you've had a similar experience if you tried to pick up a book when you've just constantly been stimulated by our digital world that we're living in. Reading something like this, these little words on this type of paper, this is hard stuff. I don't think I made it through a couple chapters at first when I was getting back into reading. But I have found reading to be, of all of these hobbies, the most healing because it has been that challenging. It's been a skill that I have had to relearn. And it's kind of multiple skills all in one. It's the fact that you actually have to read, you have to have that comprehension of what's the text on the page. Yes, how does my brain interpret that? These are all the types of things that you get out of reading that I think some of us, if you became a little detached and spent more time on your phone, you forget that those are all of the benefits that you get out of reading. Then there's another component all around the attention span factor. Once again, if you're used to being hyperstimulated on your technology, sitting down and reading a book may not sound like an enjoyable way to spend some time. So that was a really hard one for me to realize was, oh, I actually have to dedicate time to this and not just constantly be scrolling right past something and then, stimulated and getting another dopamine hit from something else. I actually have to intentionally sit down and say, hey, I want to read a chapter right now. What's it going to sound like? What's it going to be? What's it going to bring me? That was really hard and really did help heal my attention span once I got through it. Reading is also just going to feel more boring at first. When you're used to seeing a scroll on Instagram or TikTok, it's really going to be a shift to not have that color stimulation, not have the sound, the audio on, everything that you can get out of digital. This is a very analog, tactile thing that you have to do to sit down, open a book, and then just dig into it. That's one of my favorite things about it, the fact that it is so palpable, the fact that you can just pick it up, hold it, feel the paper, smell the book. That's why I'm not big into Kindles. I think there actually is a lot of benefit of just trying to truly get off of the technology in general on this one and going back to the raw stuff, the way that they were meant to be read. But a final huge benefit that I've gotten from reading books again as I've been healing myself from my social media addiction and my phone addiction has actually been imagination. I had lost any sort of imagination. Because we don't let ourselves get bored in this day and age, in this digital world that we live in, there's always something else to consume on your feed. There's always another video to scroll to. So we never let ourselves just sit and get bored. And the fact that reading has sparked a newfound imagination, or kind of tapping back into that childlike imagination I had as a kid, has been such an amazing peripheral benefit that I did not realize I would get. And this will take time. This is not going to happen to you when you first sit down to read after quitting social media or getting off your phone. This will not happen. It's going to take time for you to actually heal and wean off of all of the hyperstimulation that you were usually getting. And like I said before, the first couple times are not going to be enjoyable, but then you're going to get to a point where you'll be reading and all of a sudden you'll be visualizing what they're spelling out. You'll have pictures in your head and concepts of how these characters' voices sound. All these things that, these images are getting painted for you. And I think the fact that I had been addicted to tech for so long, I hadn't let my imagination run away for years. And that has been just a beautiful benefit of getting back into reading for me. Reading has really been one of the best hobbies for me as I have healed from my social media addiction. I hope you found this helpful or insightful. If you're looking to get off of social media or just detox from your relationship with technology, I've made a couple videos about it, so feel free to try those out here. My name's Kate, and thanks for tuning in. We'll talk again soon. Bye.